The Russian-Ukrainian conflict will be the first of many. Why do I say this? Well, before I explain why, again, my opinion is that it will be the first of many, I want to say that I do not wish this to be the case. I do not wish there to be a war at all. At my heart, I'm much of a hippie, peace and love. Make love, not war. That's my mindset. Negotiate, do things with the pen, not the sword. But I look at the circumstances that are going on around the world, and I just have to call it like I see it. So why is Russia doing this? There are many political reasons. I'm not a political scientist. I am a philosopher at heart, and so I like to think about things from a much more broad perspective. And what I look at is, you look at somewhere like Russia, but the rest of the world is in the same or in a very similar situation, meaning they're desperate, right? The past 2 years have been strangling economies all across the globe, and we're all interconnected, but some were going into the pandemic a lot worse off than others. So I look at Russia as one of those countries. I look at a lot of different countries at being desperate even before the pandemic. So what do you think was going to happen after 2 years of, again, being strangled and cut off, at the head? So when you look at and you see, if you're already in a bad way, your economy isn't getting stronger, it's getting worse, and then we have something like a worldwide pandemic that just shuts everything down. Yes, that's happening everywhere, but again, if you're already in the red and then it's just going to snowball down, things get really bad quickly. So now you've got a situation where countries are desperate, governments are desperate. This is on the macro level. You see this as on a big scale with governments and countries, but you also see this on the micro with people. People are desperate. Individuals are desperate, families are desperate. So micro and macro, we're all in the same sort of boat, and you can see what happens to people when they get desperate. They resort to what? Crime, stealing, things that they would never want to do, but because they're desperate and they don't feel they have another way of going about it, they take desperate measures. Now you take that on the macro and you look at governments. What's their tool? If they've tried diplomacy, you can argue if they've tried or not, but let's just say they have tried it and it's not working out to where they want it to be. They're going to then try other means. And right now, war is what Russia is going after and what they're doing in Ukraine. Again, political reasons, I have no idea, or we could talk about different reasons, but I don't want to get into that. I'm looking at just the state of desperation and what people, what governments, what we do when we get desperate. So now you've got a conflict. You've got one nation warring against another nation. The reason why I say that this will be the first of many is because, again, not just Russia is desperate, many countries are desperate. But also, if you just think, if a country is involved in a war, let's just take Russia, for example. Russia is a very big country, and they have borders with Europe, and they have borders with Asia. Now, let's take the extremes. So they're in Ukraine on one side, on the European border, and then you take North Korea, which is on their eastern border on the Asian side towards the Pacific. If you were deciding to, for example, take over a country like North Korea, okay? Any, let's just say Japan or China or somebody decides they want to take over the territory of North Korea. And for whatever reason, again, just go with me on the example, Russia is going to, they have an allyship with North Korea. Let's just say that they do. I have no idea if they do or not, but let's just say they do, and North Korea is dependent on help from Russia militarily. Well, if their military is already occupied on one end, on the European side, they're going to be spread thin if an attack happens on the North Korean side or at North Korea on that border. So what I see with situations like this is one country is desperate. They take desperate measures, they take action. This is, excuse me, what I believe going to create a snowball effect where other countries look at that and maybe even just look at that as an example and say, hey, this is our opportunity to strike while we're desperate, while we don't have any other options. Look at what they're doing. But also, if Russia is allied with anyone and countries understand that they're going to be helped by Russia through their military, what a better opportunity to attack those areas or to go in and try to, again, do something desperate like bomb, like go in with military to make things a lot easier on yourself. Why would you wait till Russia is full and healthy? I mean, what would be a better time to attack, right? Would it be now, or would it be when they're sitting back waiting, right? When everyone is in their military is ready to go and not occupied versus they're out fighting another war. So I look at the situation and I look at how intertwined we are globally, and how if gas prices because of this conflict start to go up and up and up for certain nations, they're going to get increasingly desperate. And who knows what they're going to do. I'm not saying that they are definitely going to then start a war, because who knows if that would even benefit them. But what I'm saying is this is what people do when they get desperate. They make rash decisions. People are talking about that with Putin. It's like he shouldn't be doing this. He's making a rash decision. They should be doing more diplomacy. But when you're desperate, when you're backed up against the wall, when you feel like you don't have any other options, you don't necessarily think well. You don't think in logical terms. You do things that are illogical. So with that being said, I look at this situation and unfortunately, again, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that this conflict gets settled down, and I hope that this is a lesson for the rest of the world to say, hey, we don't need conflict. We need to, again, use the pen, not the sword, and figure out ways of being diplomatic because we're all in this together. I hope that's the lesson that we learn. But I don't believe that's human nature. I don't believe that's what we're going to end up doing. I feel like this is the start of many little different wars here and there, little conflicts, and maybe it boils over into bigger conflicts. But I just look around and look at how desperate some governments are, how desperate, again, on the macro with governments and the micro with people. People are the country, right? And if the country of people are desperate, that has to filter its way all the way up to the top level, the heads of state that are going to make these decisions. So again, I hope I'm wrong, but this is just my opinion on things. This is how I see these events unfolding. I pray for the people in Ukraine. I pray for the people in Russia. I hope that things can get settled down, but again, I just don't see that happening. And we'll see what the next steps are and what happens. But like I mentioned in a previous video about the fourth turning, these times are in history very similar to other times when it's like a boiling point, right? You turn on the kettle and it's lukewarm, and then it starts to get hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter, and then it starts to boil. You hear it. That's where I feel we're at on so many different levels, and I don't see it getting any better. I see it getting worse before it gets better. There's always good news around the corner, but I feel like things are going to get a lot worse before they get better on many different areas. So That's my opinion. Now, it doesn't mean that you're, I look at these situations and I say, man, like how much can we really handle as human beings? We've gone through these past 2 years. I mean, things just get worse. Feels like things just get worse and worse and worse. And now we have this conflict, and who knows what's going to happen next. And like I'm telling you right now, things are going to get worse. It's like, Jesus, what? Calm down. But again, there are ways of dealing with this mentally. And so if you're struggling with that, I'm going to be putting out some things that can hopefully, it's not going to change the world, it's not going to change what's happening, but it can help you deal with what's going on. And, because I need that same help. I think about these things and it weighs on me, even though I know no one in Ukraine. I know no one in Russia, but these things still weigh on me as a person. And when you're inundated with news, it weighs on your psyche. So I'm going to talk about ways and practices that can help you stay grounded and stay centered through all of this. But again, I just don't see it calming down. I see it ramping up. So brace for impact and stay strong. Peace and love. Hopefully the conflicts can subside. But that's my opinion on things. Until next time.